Hello, we are continuing to talk about the Cold War. We are still in our textbook, which you can find at the National Emergency Library or National Emergency Archive. It won't be exactly this edition, but it is called the Prentice Hall United States History. We are going to finish talking about the effects of the war right now. So, we're going to talk about international cooperation. Americans were quick to recognize that their nation had taken on a new position in the world. After World War I, the Senate had rejected the Treaty of Versailles and refused to join the League of Nations. Many Americans now viewed these decisions as mistakes that contributed to the rise of fascism and the outbreak of another war. As World War II drew to a close, Americans were ready to embrace the idea of world organizations. A new world economy takes shape. The United States took on major responsibilities in shaping the post war world economy. After meeting in 1944 with the Allies in Bretton Woods, New Hampshire, the U.S. government pushed for establishment of the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank. The United States provided most of the working capital for these new organizations, which worked to foster global economic and financial stability. The United States also signed the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade, a 1948 treaty designed to expand world trade by reducing tariffs. The United Nations is formed. Even more importantly, the United States led for the charge of the establishment of the United Nations, an organization that many hoped would succeed where the League of Nations had failed. In April of 1945, delegates from 50 nations met in San Francisco to write the charter for the UN. The Senate overwhelmingly ratified the charter, and the UN set up its permanent home in New York City. The United Nations was organized on the basis of cooperation between the great powers, not on the absolute equality of all nations. All member nations sat on the General Assembly. However, the five major World War II allies, the United States, the Soviet Union, Britain, France, and China, were assigned permanent seats on the most powerful arm of the UN, the Security Council. Over the next decades, the UN aided the move away from colonialism, helped to create the Jewish state of Israel, mediated regional conflicts, and provided food and other aid to much of the world. The UN also issued the Universal Declaration of Human Rights in 1948. This idealistic document states recognition of inherent dignity and of the equal and inalienable rights of all members of the human family is the foundation of freedom, justice, and peace in the world. All human beings are born free and equal in dignity and rights. They are endowed with reason and conscience and should act toward one another in a spirit of brotherhood. And this is a direct quote from the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. The Declaration condemns slavery and torture, upholds freedom of speech and religion, and affirms that everyone has the right to a standard of living adequate for the health and well-being of himself and his family. Though the document sets lofty goals, it has proved difficult to enforce. War criminals go on trial. In the effort to create a better world, the Allies did not forget to punish the people who had caused so much destruction and death. During the war, the Axis powers had repeatedly violated the Geneva Convention, an international agreement governing the humane treatment of wounded soldiers and prisoners of war. The Allies tried more than a thousand Japanese citizens for committing atrocities in China, Korea, and Southeast Asia, and brutally mistreating prisoners of war. Hundreds were condemned to death, including Prime Minister Hideki Toho and the general responsible for the Bataan Death March. Americans more closely followed the Nuremberg Trials, in which the Allies prosecuted Nazis for war crimes. The trials turned a glaring spotlight on the evils of the Third Reich. The first of the Nuremberg trials involved the key leaders of Nazi Germany, such as Hermann Goring. Day by day, prosecutors described their crimes, detailing especially the horrors of the Holocaust. Most of the defendants pleaded that they were just following orders, that Hitler was the source of all the crimes. The judges at Nuremberg did not accept their excuses. Some of the Nazis were hanged, others received long prison terms. In the following decades, Allied or Israeli authorities captured and tried such other Nazis as Adolf Eichmann, a leading architect of the final solution. The periodic trials kept alive the memory of the Nazi crimes against humanity. Checkpoint. What steps did the United States take to increase its role in the post-war world? And if we go back to what I've read, those steps are going to include creating a new world economy, creating a world bank, signing the General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade, creating and participating in the United Nations, and helping with the war crimes trials. All right, so that wraps up the effects of World War II, which is going to directly lead into what we're talking about with the Cold War. And we're going to, in the next video, get kind of into the meat of the Cold War. So take care until then. Bye.